All right, let's start. We first, before we get into the actual conversation with our panelists here, I want to answer today's dad joke. So, how many Torontonians does it take to change a light bulb? Just one to hold the bulb while the country revolves around it. Ching.
There you have it.
Hey, Sean, being from British Columbia, how does that resonate or not?
Yeah, it depends on which sports app you're looking at, but yeah, that resonates with me in the hockey world for sure.
Oh, awesome. Okay, great. Well, everyone, thank you for coming to today's event. I'm Scott Wynn, the founder and CEO of Bodhi. And today, what we're going to try to do is we're going to answer the question, why is software failing your solar business? So it's a pretty provocative question. And we've got two special guests here who are going to be able to help answer that question for us. So we've got Babak Sardari, the CEO of Scoop Solar. You guys are what, celebrating, I think, your 10th year anniversary soon, right?
Getting
Babak?
close. Yeah, getting close.
Okay, that's awesome. So for those that don't know Vavik, don't know Scoop, what's your 15-second elevator pitch for Scoop?
Oh, geez. There's, yeah, elevator pitch. I mean, at a high level, we are a software and AI technology company. We've been focused in this space, the solar and new energy for the past eight plus years. We basically provide what we call a central operations hub, which is a pretty unique concept in the industry. And it's really focused on helping solar renewable companies organize and digitize their business processes. You can think of it as like a music conductor that brings all your tools, people, and processes together in harmony, right? So, the normal sense is that companies are juggling a lot of tools, spreadsheets, a lot of siloed data, manual tasks. We help them kind of organize all of that into cohesive workflows across their entire technology stack. And because we've been in the industry, as Scott mentioned, for such a long time, we bring a lot more than the software. We actually get in the trenches and we work with our clients, much like Bodhi. So
Yeah,
that's us.
that's awesome. Okay, and then speaking of solar renewable companies that are using Scoop and also using Bodhi, we have here Sean Palfiner, the director of Riverside Energy based in British Columbia, Canada. Sean, why don't you give us your 15-second pitch or maybe take a little more time? What makes what Riverside special compared to some of the other companies in your area?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Happy to be here and share the experience. I mean, for Riverside, we've been in business officially since 1995. So back then, it was primarily off-grid and not a lot of grid-connected systems, if you will. The investment and the business case wasn't there. So a lot of experience with batteries, inverters in the early days, what works, what doesn't. We've been sticking to BC. We've got over 1,000 installations in British Columbia. And then one of my other business partners, Ben, he helped co-author the Enercan PV Builder's Guide. So that's basically the book for how builders should consult their clients for putting solar on their homes. And it's kind of cool to say that we helped write the book on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. So thanks, Babik. Thanks, Sean, for joining this panel. And then for those that aren't aware of Bodhi, we do put on these webinars and other types of great content for the industry. We also provide a software. So we are a customer experience platform that really helps installers like Riverside reduce the cost of poor customer communications. And a lot of the way that we do that, which we're actually going to get into some of that in this webinar today, we do it by integrating with the company's operational tools, like their CRM or their project management tool, like Scoop, but also their documents and their field apps. And really, it's about personalizing and then automating a lot of that engagement from lead to install to repeat customers. So that just really helps the operational staff at the companies. And so we'll go into more detail about um, how Scoop operates, how Bodhi operates, and how Riverside really has gone from an older system technology philosophy into a more modern one. So if you guys want to if the audience members, if y'all want to get in touch with any of us, I'm going to post our LinkedIn accounts in the chat box. So if you have any questions, please add them also to let me write this, here it is, please write them in the Q&A section of the webinar, and we'll get to them not during the conversation, but also we'll have a Q&A section at the end. So, all right, so let's dive in. So first off, I just want to kind of set the scene. I mean, for those members that are audience members that are calling from the States, it's been a pretty wild year and a half, all right? But if you're in Canada, there's actually been some solid growth. There's been some new incentives or good incentives from the government and municipalities, from provinces. And so the market has grown. So the first question is here to Babak. Why are companies, let's say like Riverside, why are they investing in software right now, given the current market environments?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and it's probably even a better answer coming from Sean that I would love to hear myself. But from my perspective, I mean, every market is cyclical, and solar is definitely no exception to that. You know, you've got the solar coaster happening. Um, so you're going to have down cycles, you're going to have up cycles, and the next up cycle is coming. The macro picture looks great for solar, renewable energy in general. There's a lot of support for it, right, in the market, this type of energy. So it's going to happen. So I think the reason we see companies working with us and partnering with us in this climate is essentially they're trying to use this down cycle as an opportunity, right, to build systems, build processes, improve things because they know that when they come out the other end and there's opportunities, they want to be in a better position to take advantage of them, right? From a capacity, from a growth capacity perspective. And that's where we are able to help them.
Yeah, what I've heard, Babak, and see if you can confirm this or not, it's like a lot of the companies that are investing in the software right now, it's because it's important right now for them to cut costs, and software is one of those ways to do it. But then in addition, it's also setting up so that when they need to scale, when the market does rebound, they're actually able to handle that. So what
Yeah,
it,
yeah, that's the nature of it. It's in any kind of automation essentially is quote unquote what they call recession proof in the sense that I was actually in the industrial automation side of the industry before, like robotics and that kind of thing. And we had the same thing is in down markets, you know, you help people save costs because the ROI could be so significant, right? From even just a cost savings point of view. And then as you're automating things, you're also building more capacity for growth. So when the good times roll back in, you're ready, right? You're much more ready than your peers to take advantage of that. Basically, a rising tide doesn't lift all boats at the same rate, right? When it comes, those boats that are ready, they're better able to take advantage of that growth cycle.
and so Sean, I mean, Babak was interested in hearing kind of your thoughts on this Riverside's perspective.
Yeah, I can really resonate with what you said there too, Babak. It's you know, for us in BC in particular, there was a federal program where, you know, residential customers were getting $5,000 back from the government of Canada, and then that got pulled about 3 years earlier than we expected it to. And you know, that was kind of interesting as we're building up our software and our processes and everything else that goes with it, to have that go away. It was, you know, we were building a lot of our stuff towards that. And then only a few months later, the province introduced a very similar rebate. So we kind of stuck to it, kept building it. And then when that next rebate came out, we already had those pieces in place to really, you know, capture it in the moment and not be working on it for days, weeks at a time. So
Yeah.
that, you know, that's a pretty good example of exactly what you're talking about, is just being ready for when that happens. And it was a good feeling this time around than the time before that.
All right, but I think some folks will agree to that, but then there are a lot of installers that haven't had a great experience with software. So I remember when I asked how many people had a negative experience with software at my NAPCEP training course back in, I don't know, was that April, May, whenever NAPCEP was. I think like more than half of the folks in the audience raised their hands. So, you know, why do you think that is?
I mean, it's complex, right? It's a complex subject matter, but at the same time, it's pretty simple. So I would say there are maybe two ways to look at it. One is on the vendor or software provider side. That's our side, right? We are definitely we see players out there, right? Unfortunately, they're still pushing that old sort of, hey, we can do it all, right? All in one, just come on into the garden. We can take care of everything. We all know, inherently, we know that's a myth, right? They just can't deliver all those capabilities at a world-class level. But people are susceptible to that, right? Initially. So, and it's sort of bound for failure. So that's definitely one source of failure that you need to watch out for when it comes to selecting the right partners. That's sort of a flag, right? That's a tell when they're pushing this all-in-one sort of narrative. And then on the customer side, I would say it's where we've seen the biggest source of failure is really kind of the mindset and mentality about software and technology. If you treat it like a point solution, right, to a point problem. So you're thinking of it almost like as an appliance that you purchase, you turn on, and you forget about, right? It's
Mhm.
in a corner of your business, it's doing this one thing, and maybe someone's in charge of it, maybe not. And eventually it fails, right? Eventually it falls apart, entropy takes over, uh, as opposed to really realizing that mindset that every company is going to be a technology company, if not already, right? I mean, the adage of software is eating the world is so much more true today than it was 10 years ago or 15 years ago when it was coined. And you add AI to that, that's even more so. So this innovation is going to come from every corner. And if you start thinking of your business or your software as that engine of growth, that's a very different mindset, which means you will treat it with the effort, investment, attention, focus that it actually deserves and needs to succeed. So I would say that's the second sort of failure
Mhm.
slash success factor is your philosophy towards software and creating that whole, central operations hub.
Yeah. So going back to that initial point, Vavik, you talked about the kind of the all-in-one um, set. So I think when we started Bodhi, I mean, we started off just kind of with the entire philosophy of a software stack. So you're right, where, as a customer, it's ideal to get that holy grail of an all-in-one, but that's not realistic. And so the alternative is a software stack where you have, your CRM or your project management tool or your other types of things, each and every one. Each and every tool that's specific to that task and does that task really well. How often are you seeing that philosophy being adopted within the customer base?
Not often enough, right? And that's part of the battle we have on our hand is trying to educate our prospects, our customers about this concept, right? Because it's a shift in mindset from, hey, I could just get everything in one place. And there's definitely enough people out there promising that, right? Which creates a lot of fog in the room, a lot of confusion. And of course, when we are putting this thinking out there, it may come across as self-serving, right? But at the same time, they can see our willingness to partner with anyone and everyone, right? That sort of handful of best-in-class tools. Our partnership with Bodhi is a great example of that. And we do the same thing with Aurora. We do the same thing with Solo, all the various players, including also CRMs and that sort of thing. So I think we are seeing it more and more as we are kind of putting this education out there. We are seeing more people come around to that argument and
Mhm.
the logic of that, but it's challenging, definitely.
Yeah. So let's talk, Sean, let's talk about your experience. So take us a few years back. I'm not sure how many years we have to go back, but how did Riverside manage your operations before Scoop and Bodhi? What were the tools you were using, but what was kind of that situation y'all were in back in the days?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, way back in the days, it was napkins and pencils and those kinds of things. But as it kind of gradually progressed, you pick up a couple computers and you start to digitize things. And for us, it was a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of Google Drive documents. So you'd be storing different photos and different files, and then nomenclature became a big thing for us. And then it sort of evolved to the point where we needed some kind of project management tool to really capture everything and start to hold team members accountable for what their part was. And so we tried a couple other ones. Reich in particular was kind of a generic blanket type project management software. So moving over to that, it wasn't solar specific, but it was still a piece of software that you could use. So trying to use that, and between the Google Drive, between the scribbles on napkins, that's kind of how it was going for a long time. And then, same thing as it progressed, as we started getting a little bit bigger and more customers, we knew we had to look for something else. And, when you look for something more specific and you talk to people in the industry, you find out what others are using. You start doing your research, and then, we jump on a demo with Scoop, and it's just a consensus with all the owners that, hey, this looks like this is the right solution, and we're willing to give it a shot.
Did you ever, when before, so what it sounded like was back in the days or in the intermediate, you were using different tools, software tools, but they were disjointed. Were you ever enticed by the all-in-one solution that Babak was just mentioning? And kind of how did you think about that, and how did you come to the realization like, hey, I'm going to start to think about this in terms of a stack?
I think everybody has like a vision in their mind of how it should work or how it could work best, just with an all-in-one type solution. And I've got 5 siblings, and some of them are in different industries. And I had some experience at looking at some of their all-in-one solutions, and then just in talking to them around the cost and the development time and how much maintenance it took, it was not very attractive to us because we're still growing and everything like that. And then it became pretty clear that, if you could really separate these and have support on either end, again, good example, Scoop and Bodhi is one of those things where, you're taking care of a very specific element of the customer journey. And if we need support with that, it's there along the way, instead of the whole thing being up to a certain number of developers to help you try to figure it out. So yeah, it's the all-in-one is always tempting, but it's it's not something that I see being feasible, especially for us at this time.
Yeah. So Babak, in your experience, and your team's experience, how common is this scenario that Riverside was previously in? How often did you see that when you talk to folks in the industry?
Yeah, it's quite common, right? I mean, that I really empathize with that because that's a really difficult, challenging stage, right? Making this decision, which tools do we go for? And I think it comes down to, oftentimes at companies, it comes down to comparing feature sets, right? They make spreadsheets where there's like a list of features, it might be like 50 features long, and they're comparing and putting check boxes in. But the fact is, like, that's just not the right mindset to look at it, because
Mhm.
no one tool is going to give you everything you need to that level that you need today, and especially tomorrow, right? Because your needs are going to evolve and change. So you need to think in terms of resilience, like, how do I build this technology stack so that it's resilient? But at the same time, you need a wrapper, you need a connector, and that's where we started thinking about Central Operations Hub, is that, and this integration platform we call Glue, because we saw that was a major component of how we were and Bodhi is going to the market, right? Which is we are saying, hey, we are best in class in automating your workflows, your data flows, your operations, your project management. Bodhi is saying, hey, we are the best in class in customer communication, engagement, customer experience, making sure you get the maximum number of referrals, customer satisfaction. Okay, great. So how do we connect these tools? Also, how do we connect them with our CRM, right, where our salespeople live? How do we connect this with our accounting? Maybe it's Xero, maybe it's QuickBooks. How do we connect it with Aurora or Solo? That whole thing has to work, right, as a cohesive whole. And so integration as a service that you can turn on, and these connectors became really critical. And then managing workflows across the entire stack became really critical, because ultimately companies aren't interested in the tools or the features or functions. They're interested in executing their workflows.
Yeah.
Right? That's really what they're trying to get out of this. And so if we can build an engine that taps into this amazing functionality and power of platforms like Bodhi and all the other platforms, and then weave them into cohesive workflows, then we have a winning solution. So that's really been the experience, and I would say it's very common, right?
Yeah.
The journey that Sean is explaining.
Yeah. So maybe we can get a little bit more detailed on that. Sean, let me ask this more pointed question. Um, was there some At what point, what was there, at what point did you decide that Riverside needed to make this change? Was there kind of this pivotal moment in the business? Was there some event? Was there some major catastrophe? You're like, hey, we've got to make this change from our previous disjointed system to a new one?
Yeah, I think it was more for my personal sanity, but it was a lot of, the way we used to do things with the Google Drive and the spreadsheets and the documents going in there and all the photos. I was doing a lot of this. I came from an installer background, so I was installing solar and then moved into more of like the sales business development side of things. And what would happen is when I had to turn a project over to an installation team, we would have to meet about it in the morning and we would have to open up our folders and we would have to look at our photos and we'd have to determine what was the main service panel, what was the sub panel, even though it was labeled, how far away is the trench going to be dug to get to the meter, those types of things. Those conversations were happening, every morning. And when you're up to about 5 crews, the first 2 hours of my morning was just meeting with them, going over the jobs for the day, and then debriefing what happened. And, a lot of questions about where do I put this when it's done? And, this installation photo, that commissioning report, all those kinds of things. It was taking up all of my time. And so I really wanted to, I guess, in a sense, buy my time back, but also be able to hold all the other team members accountable as well, too. So you bring on more staff that are doing more things and more pieces of the conveyor belt, if you will. And I guess the pivotal moment was one day I woke up and I was thinking to myself, I don't want to go to these 2-hour meetings with installers every day and have to explain to them what my thought was when I was doing the site assessment and just have it all laid out and have it all easy for them, right? So yeah, that was kind of the moment, I guess, if I could describe it.
Okay, got it, got it. All right, just a reminder for the audience, if you have a question for the panelists, just type them into the Q&A box, and that's the box. Don't put them in the chat because I'm not looking at that. Put it in the Q&A, and then we'll get your question answered. So let me move up to a kind of a different question, and I don't want to actually get into the kind of the product demo, but one of the things we always hear about is let me go. This is going to be to you, Sean. What's your response to people who say, how can I afford all these different software tools?
Yeah, I think you have to look at, your position at that moment and where you want to be, what your plan looks like. And it's something we say to our customers who are going solar, and it's kind of what's the cost of doing nothing. So if you don't take that step now and you look back on it in a year wishing you had or wishing you had a better system where you're still stuck in the same place doing that same thing, it's the oak tree reference. It's all those things. Like when is the best time? And you got to get started, but you also have to make sure that it makes financial sense for you. So when we were a company of 3, 4 people working out of a garage, it probably didn't make as much sense at that time to make that jump. But as you gradually get bigger, looking back on it, we probably should have done this a little bit sooner. But you never really know when the right time is. You just kind of you have a feeling of, okay, this is going to keep growing, and this is where we want to get to. It's money well spent, I guess. There's just it's you're saving time, and that gives you more time to work on your business.
Yeah. And so for Babak, I'm going to ask you this slightly different question. Um, is there ever a scenario, or in what scenarios would you ever say to a potential customer that they're talking with, where you essentially kind of say, "Hey, we'd love to help you, but Scoop isn't the right fit for your current situation."
That's a great question. I would say it's less about size or even type of operations for us. Because the platform is configurable, you can build workflows, configure workflows, data flows, that sort of thing. It's much more about that philosophy and culture fit, I think. So if you find a company where the team and especially that leadership has the same type of vision about software and technology, and they see it as a core part of their engine of growth into the future, we know that we're going to be able to add a lot more value, right?
Mhm,
Than if they're just thinking of a point solution. Hey, I just need something to automate my site surveys, or I need something to capture photos in the field,
mhm.
or I need this all in one thing, just make it work, that sort of thing. Like those types of companies tend to be not as good a fit because we know we've got our work cut out for us in terms
Yeah.
of educating them and bringing them into, the way that they should be thinking about software and technology.
Yeah, I remember one of our first customers when we first started talking to them. They had two project managers and they were managing by all the files were in these manila folders, and they had along the counter in their office, they had the different stages. It was essentially an analog Kanban board where they would take the folder and then move it from the
Physically.
handoff stage to the design phase to
Yeah.
the it was pretty funny. And so we were helping them adopt I think at the time HubSpot as well. So it's definitely totally understand that
I mean,
philosophy
that
mindset.
one seems like a really good customer in a way because they were already kind of like physically realizing the process. But yeah, no, there's definitely a mix out there. We try and put as much, content out there, including these types of events, hopefully to kind of, because
Mhm,
I think we need it as an industry, right? A solar industry, we've been in it since 2016, and it's definitely been maturing, consolidating. Um, but it needs to do more, right? I came from a manufacturing background, manufacturing automation, and that industry is as old as rocks, right? And so they've had those cycles already behind them. And I
mhm.
think we need a similar sort of evolution in the solar industry as well.
Yeah. All right, we got a couple of few questions coming in Q&A. There's a couple which I think I'm going to save for the actual product demo where Sean can chime in with it as well. But there is one that I think could be answered right now, and then we'll hop into the demo. Sean, how did you train your team on using new tools? Did you struggle to get buy-in?
Yeah, especially with the installation group in the beginning. That's a great question, because it can be difficult to introduce something to, I guess, a network that's already semi-functioning. So to train them, I mean, Scoop was great in the beginning when we said, yeah, we're interested in doing this. There was some onboarding and there was some personalized training with just the installation group. That was probably the trickiest one. But then with a lot of our processes that we've been working on, you guys referred to the physical movement of folders. We actually had a name for that here. It was called the sneaker net. And we would take the folder and move it to the next one and move it to the next one. So for the training, um, anytime you need to manage and measure anyone in a position in your company, you have to be able to train them on what you're doing. And so everybody essentially was getting a number, and sometimes that number was zero, where it was zero errors on the site assessment. And so to be able to actually measure those, Scoop gives you a way to do that, which is great. So you've got your different workflows, you've got your different form fields and everything, which I'm sure we'll get into. But to train them, it was individualized, sitting down with them, making sure they understand their portion, and actually having it documented with standard operating procedures specific to Scoop. And there's even ones that we have in our company specific to Bodhi. So how do I do this? Here it is. It's laid out for you. Here's the workflow action that you need to take. And when you've done these things, your job is done. It's moved on to the next person, and the next team member is able to pick it up. So it's showing them how to use filters, and it doesn't take as long as you'd think. It's you do have to update as things change. We'll say the term solar coaster often, and things do change in our industry almost daily. So you're constantly updating these documents. You're constantly not training on how to do something new, but just training on how to use the software and have a good understanding of it. So being able to show your team the back end on how you're developing this goes a long way too, so that they actually understand what your intention is behind these workflows and these auto actions, and just giving them that, full transparency as to, this is how it works, and this is the position you're playing on the team.
Nice.
So yeah.
Awesome. All right, Sean, so can we take a look at how Riverside has set up Scoop and Bodhi?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So for this, we're going to invite a couple of additional folks onto the panel. We've got Remy Jarvis, the growth account manager at Scoop, and we've got MJ Gilliland. She's the customer success manager at Bodhi. So Remy, I'm actually just going to hand this over to you.
Sean, always a pleasure. I've opened up your actual Scoop account here and come into your project board. For everyone else's context, this is Riverside's live environment with the workflows and configuration that Sean's built. but we've filled it with some dummy data just to protect Riverside's confidential information here. I think just a awesome starting point to help us understand a little bit as well, Sean. Um, can you tell us when you joined Riverside versus now, the amount of projects that were being managed? So when you first came in, how many projects were kind of being managed on a monthly basis to now, just to get some context of like how the business has changed since you've been there.
Yeah, for sure. So I've joined Riverside. It's probably about 7 years ago. Pretty close to that now, anyways. At the time, we were doing anywhere from 4 to 6 projects a month, if I had to guess. And again, that was a little bit split between off-grid and grid connected because it was a primarily off-grid company to begin with. And then as times progressed, I mean, now we're probably in the range of 50 to 70 projects a month on like a good month for what we're managing. So it's gone up maybe tenfold since then. Which, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, so cool. I put in 20 demo customers here, so less about a third of maybe what you're managing right now yourself. So this is the project board. These are the lanes that you've chosen to kind of represent the different phases as your projects move through. Can you share with us a little bit of how you track this many different projects and workflows and tasks that, your dozens of staff are working on a daily basis?
Absolutely, yeah. So we've got different departments doing different things. I mean, essentially everything is a bit of a sales department until the panels are going on the roof. There's a lot of it's a gentle process. So in the beginning, you've got your advisors or your sales reps, if you will, that are qualifying, asking those questions. They need a spot to put all those clients that they're working with. And this might answer one of the Q&As there, like when do we decide that they go into Scoop as far as like a qualified lead? So that's when we've got somebody that we're talking to and they've shown interest in solar, or perhaps we've approached them and they've said, sure, we'll take a look. We're going to put them into Scoop right away. We do have a separate CRM that we use for, I guess you could call them the looky-loos, but as soon as someone's showing interest and our sales reps want to track them, they're going into Scoop. They're starting out at the first stage, which is just the qualified stage. And we're trying to get them qualified, which means we've got to ask those right questions, go through the checklist, make sure they've sent us a picture of their utility bill so we understand how much power they're using. And then what does their electrical look like? So we're asking for a couple photos from the client. Once that's complete and you can move the workflow over to remote design, we've got a team of designers. So it's made up of engineers and EITs, folks that are really into solar, which is great. And they're going to take a look at what the sales rep has put together, and they're going to build something along the lines of, hey, this could work for the client, or this is what we're
Mm.
proposing as like the best solution. Once that's done, it's actually going to sit in that same app and it's going to go back to the sales rep where they're going to pick it up and it's going to say, hey, this is done. Why don't you take a look at it and propose it to your customer, get some feedback. There's a couple workflows in there where they can go back and forth. Just because when there was only one sales rep and maybe one designer, it's easy. They're sitting beside each other. When you get up to about, 8 in-house designers, and at one point, I think we had 25 sales reps. It could just get really confusing and you weren't sure who was working with who. So, we've got individual form fields for who the rep is, who the designer is. That way we don't lose track. And when a client says, yeah, that looks good, we would like to do this, we can move them over to a site survey stage, which is where we've got, again, specific people just to handle the site survey portion. They're ready to go. We don't want our customers waiting too long after they've said yes. So a couple people on staff that can just hop in the car and drive. They know when a site survey is ready because someone has signed off on a preliminary design. It shows up on their dashboard. They come in the morning. Okay, here's the site surveys I have. They'll make sure that they're scheduled properly, give the customer a call. Hey, we're still on. Yep, sounds good. It's that gentle sales phase where anything can happen. Once the site survey is complete and they've got all the information uploaded, I love that there's mandatory fields so we can't miss anything. They'll kick it back to our engineering team. And so we'll take it from a preliminary, hey, it could do this and it will likely cost this, to now we're counting every screw. We're seeing what the solar access scores are. And we're going to give this back to the sales rep one more time and let them know, hey, this is what it's going to be for the customer. would they like to proceed? Because at this point, we need a signed contract and we need to get going. Um, Once they've signed off, we've got an internal operations team. We've named this next phase, I guess, solar traffic control, because there's so many different aspects to a project
Yeah.
that can come through. So it could be someone who doesn't want to use any of the federal programs, or they don't qualify, and it's a cash deal. They just want the solar right away. That has to be directed, one way. And if somebody wants to use the federal loan program, which is great, there's a lot of government red tape. That's got to go another way, and that's got to go to like our incentives team and people who help our clients with rebates. Maybe it's a specialized project where it's not material that we keep on hand. Same thing, it's sitting in that solar traffic control. The internal operations team knows, hey, we have to order this and we have to have this ready to go in 2 weeks or whatever it might be. So
Yeah,
that
and I know you'll often I'll interject because I know you often run solar traffic control while other workflows are running. So it's not always a very linear one is complete and the next one starts, but you're actually able to kick off two different workflows for two different teams to kind of be working on the same project as once, with the information being shared and the updates shared in a very automated way. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen after a contract is signed, and we know we're doing a job at this point. There's permits to be pulled, there's net metering applications, there's structural, there's all kinds of different things, and we've got different people on the team playing different roles. So
Mm.
yeah, you're correct. A lot of things happen in that app, and at certain workflow stages in that app, it might kick off another app
Hmm.
because we might know that somebody is applying for the new BC Hydro rebate, and we want one of our team members to reach out and say, "Hey, I'm your point of contact for this, and I'm going to be able to help you do this."
Okay, very cool. I love it. And I think, yeah, it's just really a understandable way to organize and see these projects flow. And I'll point out, in a couple of these, it's demo data, so it's not always perfect, but you were kind of saying as things go through a workflow, it's not always owned by the same person at the same time. One team may own it, but they're kind of passing it from the sales rep and then back to the designer and then back to the sales rep multiple times. So you can come in and see, exactly how long it's been sitting here, its current stage as part of this site survey, as well as the owner, right? And that kind of gives you that degree of accountability where you can start to chase down maybe things that are too slowing, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'll keep going back to the sales process of a solar project. It's a careful handoff, and if you're not getting back to people in a timely manner, or someone's sitting for too long in this day and age, they're going to lose interest, or they're going to buy a hot tub instead, or
Hmm.
there's all these things that can happen. So to be able to visualize it and see that, someone has been waiting too long, what's going on, we're able to interject from a management perspective and say, hey, what's happening with this? How come you haven't brought this to us? Which we didn't have that ability in the past with Google Drive and all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I'm going to now jump into an example of a workflow. So choosing one of these detailed designs. One thing I've always really loved about your account, Sean, is the organization. Like you keep it very simple and very efficient. And I notice you always provide the information up top that one of your team members may need to complete their work. So you've got, your drop down of your customer information. For a detailed design, you've gone and put in everything that was pulled in on that earlier site survey into a big list here so your designer can pull it up all in one place. And then at the bottom, you have what you require from your team. So, hey, in order for you to complete your detailed design, we're going to need all of these fields, and some of them are not mandatory and some of them are mandatory. So they cannot even say they're complete their workflow without doing that. And then the second piece, and this was my follow-up question, once they've filled out all their information and they're coming up to actions to essentially move it on. I know this is something customers are always trying to work out and find that nice balance between keeping things on very set rails of like it has to go from one stage to the next. There's no deviation versus having a bit of that like decision tree. It can go over here, it can go over here. When you're designing these workflows or refining them and taking a look at maybe a problem area and how to fix it, how do you make those decisions? How do you decide whether like that perfect balance between highly structured versus like, it can go in multiple ways, but we need it to also always kind of come back to that same point at the end.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of trial and error, and it's a lot of communication with your team. So just because you've set it up one way doesn't mean that's the way it's set forever. Things can change, and there's going to be occasions where there's a one-off and something strange has happened, and you might have to make a different change. But overall, it's, when you're training each department on what they have to look for, you look at these workflows that you've brought up here. Each department has a filter set up for just themselves, so they can see, hey, what's on my dashboard and what do I have to work on today, and what is my number, and how long do I have to complete this? So there's due dates, there's end dates, all those things that can go in there. If you're trying to figure out where it goes next, it's essentially between the sales rep and the designer for most of the first four
Mhm.
Scoop apps that we've built out. And so they've got those ready to go. They can filter it by who their clients are and what stages they're at. And same thing, it'll show them if it's been sitting too long or if we're waiting too long. So it's never perfect, and I'm not going to say it's done right now because there's always more changes to be made, but it's working really well for what we're doing.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's definitely the attitude that I've seen in this account and seen why Riverside has managed to embrace this and succeed so much with it is that, it's always going to need more refinement. There's always another layer that can be added, taking that balance to get that feedback from your team and then implement it over time. We have about 2 more minutes of our portion. I wanted to jump over to Looksy. I know this is something you guys use a lot. Looksy is the analytics platform where you are literally pulling in all of the work, all the information your team are filling out in Scoop as they go through their workflows. You're then pulling it into this analytics tool to start crunching that data and drive insight. So again, it's a demo dashboard. It's filled with some of that anonymous data, but these are some real reports that I've copied over. And I'm just going to kind of like quickly walk through a bit of how you use it and then a question at the end. So um, you use this like, marketing, taking that question in the sales process of how did you hear about us to start to drive, how are our marketing results doing? Are things coming from online, door knocks, or emails? You've got your project status. So how many or which employees are completing workflows? I think this was kind of what you were talking about before of starting to find, who's struggling with it, who needs to have a quick sit down to walk through what they're doing, where's the time going if they're not able to complete their workflows. And then lastly, I know this is something you and I worked a lot on of building these, like I think we're kind of calling them like the nets to stop things slipping through, right? Like where are all of our projects pre-installed? Can we just get a very simple view that can get sent out to the team to say, hey, are we tracking all of these? These are customers pre-install, these are customers in install. Is everyone in the team aware of these? So as we're kind of finishing up the Scoop portion, I'd love just to hear from you how you use this data in your business. Like how do you decide what information you need? And then is there anything in here that you maybe didn't have access to before you started to embrace tools like Scoop and Bodhi? Anything you struggle, you were talking a lot about using spreadsheets. What information were you struggling with? And now that you have it, how is that used in a business?
Yeah, Looksy, I'll say, is one of the most helpful programs we have, and we're very lucky to have access to it because when we're looking at so many different aspects of the business, I mean, you touched on just the marketing piece right there. How did you hear about us? This is really building out how are we going to budget for our marketing? And if we're dumping a bunch of money into Google ads and we're not getting that much back from Google ads, most of it's coming from referrals or word of mouth, then we're going to want to give out, bigger referral bonuses or nicer gift baskets when somebody does something or goes ahead with a project because we know that's how our customers are finding us, and everything else is good for awareness. But at the end of the day, every department is going to want to know one thing or a couple things that's going to drive their success. So in the design department, they need to know how many designs they have outstanding, or for site assessments, how many are booked right now? Do we need to be hiring another site assessment person? What is our number for that? And then at the end of the day, what does our pipeline look like? So a lot of CRMs could do that, but it's nicer when it comes from Scoop because we can narrow it down to, if they're past this stage of signing the contract, but they haven't got to that installation scheduled. How many people do we have committed to a project at one time? How much material are we going to need on hand? And do we have enough installers? So this gives us that quick snapshot, and it's updated daily. It's just endlessly helpful for me to sleep at night.
Love it. Amazing. Sean, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to open up your account and go through it. I'll hand it over to MJ and then shoot off one final reminder to all of our audience. Any questions you have as you're kind of watching the Scoop account and Sean and I walk through it, please drop them in the Q&A. Would love to address them.
Thanks, Remy.
Awesome. Thanks for that awesome demo of Sean's setup in Scoop. So jumping into the Bodhi side of things. So here we are on the homepage, but really the heart of Bodhi is all about the customer journey. So I'll show you where we are there. And so what a journey is, it's a set of touches or communications a customer receives throughout their buying experience, partnering with Riverside. And so the key parts to this is, how do these touches get personalized and how do they get triggered? So that shows where the integration with Scoop is. So going here to this first phase of Sean's journey, to zoom in on this touch in particular, this is looking at what's going on in Scoop and seeing that, okay, when the status is site survey scheduled, we're going to go ahead and send out this message to the customer via SMS, email, and within their customized portal. So Sean, what was the process like building this full customer journey in Bodhi?
I mean, building the full journey didn't take that long. I mean, there's great support from the Bodhi team. Like, if you ever have any questions, or if you just want them to help you build it out with you, they'll do that, which was great. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't take long. It's extremely worth it. I mean, we just looked at Scoop and how everybody's working through those different apps, those different workflows. It's really nice to keep engaged with the client. So, I mean, I won't dive into that too much right now, but for building it out, it was a lot easier than I thought.
Yeah, and I would add, because your Scoop build out was so kind of like watertight and robust, I would say it was pretty straightforward deciding, which triggers were going to relate to which customer updates. So hopping from this to the outcome of that is the customer inbox. So I'm going to go to Riverside's conversation here with their customer, Celine Dion. So here we can see all of these customer updates are the outcome of all those triggers that we set up. So it takes all your customers' messages, no matter how they communicate back to you, whether that's by text or email or in the Bodhi portal, and it consolidates everything here in one place for your entire team to see and be able to message back. So Sean, how have your customer interactions changed since onboarding with Bodhi?
It has been a lot more streamlined, and I would say that giving them a heads up that this is coming in the beginning, just telling them a little bit about Bodhi before you turn that on or before you have that customer signed in, it goes a long ways. Because if you're just activating this and a client's getting a notification that says, I'm Bodhi and I'm going to help you on your journey, some people can be a little bit standoffish. So our sales reps do a really good job explaining, like, hey, we've got this piece of software that helps us stay connected with you. So it really does give them a one place to message us. And we were struggling a little bit with, anybody who had to change their site assessment time and date, or maybe they wanted to cancel it, and it was coming in from all these different avenues, and we're just trying to filter it to one spot. From the communication side, it was awesome. And then just to be able to have the sales rep assigned to that client, it gives them that ability to just shoot them a quick text or an email, whatever it might be, if the client has a question. So it's made it a lot cleaner, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it makes it much easier for everybody, where they can see kind of the full track record of what's been said in one place. So both you and the customer can't look back and be confused about what was messaged at any particular time. So on that note, let me open this up so we can see what Celine sees when she logs into Bodhi. So this is mirroring her login. So this is the homeowner portal, and it's where your customers can come and answer questions for themselves, to get whatever information they need to know about their solar project. And that goes from all of these updates, everything they've said, to their documents as well. So they don't have to bother your team and ask for, an attachment that you sent to an email like 2 months ago. So, Sean, how are you using Bodhi to gauge customer feedback?
It's one of my four most important metrics that I look at in our business, which is customer satisfaction. And Bodhi does a really good job of that. So you've got these surveys that can go out at different parts of the journey, and just notifying your customers, hey, you're going to get these surveys, again, goes a long ways because they know that they're coming, and the importance of how it helps us just be a better business overall. So for
Hmm.
customer feedback, when they can give us that rating, you see one on the screen out of 5, like we can do that for the site survey. We can do that for the sales experience, the installation experience, all those things that just says, hey, how was that? It lets us know how's the customer feeling about those different aspects. And we can see if there's a problem area, in the site survey. If people were constantly rating that a 3 or a 2 or whatever it is, we have to make some adjustments there. And that feedback is priceless. And same thing with that net promoter score. I mean, you can read the book, The Ultimate Question. It's what you need to know. Are your customers willing to recommend you to their friends and family? And if it's not a 10 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10, you miss the mark somewhere. And so if you want to be in business for a long time, you have to know those things. And Bodhi gives you that insight, which is great.
Awesome. Yeah, it's kind of our version of that little smiley face button thing you see at the airport, but I think we probably get more responses than people at the airport give. Awesome. So last question for you, because I want to be mindful of time here and get to the Q&A, is you've recently expanded your Bodhi journey to start much earlier in the process. So while we kind of started off with Bodhi coming in after the contract is signed, we've expanded to include lead nurturing. So really being much more active in the sales process. So what are you hoping to get out of that?
Yeah, we live in a day and age where people are used to instant gratification. And I mean, if I'm ordering something from Skip the Dishes or Amazon or whatever it is, it's nice to know where it's at, and just to have that communication, or at least that place that I can go see what's going on. We
Mhm.
wanted to get that in the journey a little bit earlier, just to keep the customer engaged and let them know, like, hey, we're right there if you need anything, instead of sending out an email or calling the rep. There's a lot of information in here that you can give them early on to help answer those questions and prep them for what's coming. So for them to go into their frequently asked questions and see, what are we always getting, even to the share the sun aspect of Bodhi, which will show the client how many other customers in their area have already gone solar with Riverside. I think that's super cool. And when you can show that to someone before they've signed a contract, it starts to build that trust in the company, and it just gets them talking. And yeah, I think it was the right move to introduce that a little bit earlier and start engaging a little bit more.
Amazing. Great. Well, I know that was pretty brief on the Bodhi side, but I'll hand it back to Scott to wrap us up with the Q&A for a few minutes.
I know. So we were chatting for quite some time. So we have only 5 minutes left before the end of the hour. And so I'm also mindful for the audience's time as well. So if you guys have questions, feel free to pop them into this Q&A. But we can also chat afterwards as well. So with the last 5 minutes, I want to just take this last 5 minutes before the end of the session, just to have one question for each of the panelists here. What's one super practical thing that each person that's listening here today, what can they do to take back to their business and try right away? So Babak, let's start with you.
Um, I would say it's just taking an inventory of processes and where potential gaps may be. What kind of tools are you using? What are the challenges? That's sort of the starting point of the journey, right? To digital transformation, which is really what we've been talking about. So earlier this year, we actually put together a whole toolkit, guide, even posters for like the team meeting room for the teams to start along this process. I'll try to post this to the chat panel here.
Mhm.
But essentially, you can download this thing. It's a free guide. No matter what tool you eventually decide to use, this would be, I think, a really useful process to go through with your team, right? And get buy-in early and
Mhm.
get people to contribute ideas to how to improve processes.
Okay. Sean, what about you?
I think ask yourself the question, how do you measure accountability in your business for each position that you have? And if you don't have a way of being able to view that quickly, it's extremely important in what you're doing. And with every client having a value, that's not saying that their project value is that client's value, knowing that they are going to refer you if you do a good job. And if they felt really good throughout the process, how are you holding each team member accountable to make sure that that client is having a good experience? So with the processes, what stage are they at and who is accountable for making sure the customer is taken care of at that point? And if you're second guessing any of your steps in the process, take a good look at what these softwares can do for you.
Yeah. Remy, you want to hop back on and give your take?
Absolutely. One thing I notice a huge difference between customers that are succeeding and customers that may struggle is the culture and the attitude across the whole organization around change. And that's the ability to bring a lot of different team and team members and team leads into a room to have a conversation, design what they want the future to look like, and all align on that path. Even if it's a couple people that are doing the implementation and really doing the building. So I know, Sean at Riverside, he's constantly sitting down with different teams and saying, this is the vision, this is where we're going. Do you see the value and what do you need and what you want to contribute? That flows a lot better than when it's one or two people who have that image and are trying to push it. And a lot of people who say, well, that doesn't really, I don't think that involves me. You just go build your workflows and I'll do my thing. Because then you get that tension when something gets released and they get a new app or they get a new portal to work in and they go, well, this doesn't meet what I need. And it's because they didn't participate early. So that has to start at the top and kind of be fundamental to that decision of like, we as a team in a business are going to sit down, work together to implement this change. So yeah.
MJ?
Yeah, I would say just put yourself in your customer's shoes. And when they give you feedback, really, really take it seriously. And then use that to build your process kind of backwards. So the way I would look at it is kind of take their feedback, we iterate better and make the customer experience better on Bodhi. But then that also kind of shines a mirror back on your operational processes as well. So how can you tighten everything up? As things change, as things move, to continue delivering the best experience to the customer. Because yeah, we can't make solar happen without them.
All right. Okay. Well, I just want to thank everyone so much. This has been an awesome conversation and demo. Hey, Charles, I do see your question. I think we're going to follow up an answer to that offline. So I'm sure the audience has tons of other questions. So Babak, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you or your team about Scoop?
Yeah, I mean, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, which Scott kindly posted earlier, but of course, all kinds of resources on the website, scoop.solar, including, booking a demo and a session with our team.
Yeah. And if you guys are interested in going deeper with Bodhi, just go to bodhi.solar and book a demo with us. And then we got one final plug here. Bodhi's got a big announcement that we're making at RE+. So if you guys can guess what it is, send me a note. And if you're right, I'll send you a rack of Texas smoked ribs. So with that, just want to thank everyone and then wish everyone a really fun last few weeks of summer.
All right. Thanks, everyone.